right, time for some open training today. Going to be continuing to talk about Service Made 11 as we continue through rebuilding our training series. And what we're going to pick up today is job allocations. And in a previous video, we had talked about 3 ways of scheduling, mostly focused on job bookings. Today, we're going to focus quickly on job allocations, which are a little different. And first, let's kind of just set the stage of what job allocations are really all about. Where a job booking, and let me just kind of jump to my schedule here. Give me just a second. I swear, it's fly. I'm trying to get it all day, and of course, it left me alone for a second, and it comes back just as I'm starting. Okay, so job allocations. So where a job booking really focuses more on well, that's not the right one. Job bookings. So job bookings focus on a job's schedule and a specific day and time. Job allocations, however, are basically completely separate or completely different than that, where it focuses on a window of time and a expiration of when it should be done within. So what I mean by that is where a job booking, I'm going to be there at 9 a.m. on this day, a job allocation says, hey, do this in the morning or during business hours, and you have until this date to complete this. And so a good use case of that might be, hey, you left a tool back at this job site. We need you to go pick it up. And it doesn't have to be done today, right now. It doesn't have to be done at this specific day and time. I just need you to do it sometime this week. Great use of a job allocation. Another good use of a job allocation is doing sales follow-up calls, where I don't necessarily need to schedule the time that needs to happen. I just need to make time to do these 15 sales follow-up calls this week. So I'm going to allocate it to myself to get it done this week so that I have on my schedule, between my scheduled times of working with customers, my follow-up calls. So job allocations have always been there, but a lot of teams have steered clear of them unless they were really comfortable with understanding how they work, because they don't show up on the schedule, at least in the past. So if I were to, in the past, make a scheduled item, so if I look at myself here and I have no bookings scheduled in the future, and I allocate a job to myself, and I'm going to say this is a 15-minute thing, which usually allocations are fairly small. It's not urgent. I just need it during business hours. And just like anything else, we never want to not set an expiration date. Let's just say 1 week. And I don't need to notify and allocate. So now when I look at my schedule here, I see that I have something today during business hours. Here's the job and so on. And now in Service Made 11, we see it actually on the schedule for that 15 minutes, and it just puts it on the schedule. But before, you didn't see that. So if I had this here, and let me go back to my jobs, and I have a actual booking here, and I'm going to schedule this one right here. These are what was on the schedule before, and now when I look back at my schedule, I see those 2 hard scheduled job bookings and then my job allocation down below here. So in the past, all you saw was on the job schedule, on the staff schedule, you saw these items. And it was really confusing for a lot of teams, and they wanted to know about the allocations, but they weren't really visible. Now, we see on the schedule that this job allocation is here in addition to my job bookings. And as you noticed as well before, it was at 8 o'clock. I scheduled something at 8. It automatically threw it behind that because it's not a hard and fast time. It just throws it in wherever there is room, more or less. Now, it's probably important to note that those are really only on the schedules, not the calendar. So on the calendar, you can see my 8 a.m. and my 9 a.m., but you don't see the allocation because an allocation is just part of the staff schedule, not necessarily something that's on the calendar per se. So it's another good thumbs up for the job schedules on that end as far as the staff schedule is concerned. Um, Now, when I have some additional ones, let me go ahead and throw some more jobs onto the allocation here. Now, if you notice as well, when I'm dragging this over, you can kind of see it here under this window. It says there's a green button under there. And let's see if I can't. No, I just don't have enough room here. But what it's saying is during business hours. And if I drop it there, it automatically created a job allocation during business hours for 1 hour. In this case, I don't want it for an hour. I want it for just the 15 minutes and save that. And you can tell it just threw it right there. And it threw it here because it's 4 o'clock on my schedule. But what I can also do, and let's go back to myself here. I see job 1 and job 2 for these allocations. I can prioritize them in the order I really need to really see them in. And what I can do with that is literally drag this to position 1. And this is job 1. Oops, I don't want to do that. There we go. So now I've moved that over here. And now, there we go. These are really small. Job 2 is in that first position. And if I were to refresh my screen here, I see job 2 comes before job 1. So you can put the priority order, the order of all these job allocations, the way you want to see them on the schedule as well. So as you start putting them in there, no, I need to get to this one before I get to this one, especially for, let's say, sales follow-up calls, you can put them in the order you really want to see them in. Let me just take a look here. So an additional item, and we're going to talk about reoccurring jobs in a separate video, but in reoccurring jobs, when I have those there, job allocations are an option as well that we can have here. Inbox scheduled. Wonder why. I'll have to circle back to that. I know from the update we were supposed to be able to do job allocations here, and I thought I saw this here prior, but no, I'm not. I'm wondering why. That shouldn't have anything to do with it. Scheduled based on that. Oops. So I'll have to dig into that. I'm going to have to come back to that one. But I know from the update, at least in the documentation, and I've seen it before, where when you're creating a job, a recurring job, that those can now be allocated to the staff members as opposed to only scheduled. And last, but probably really, really importantly for a lot of teams, job allocations are really helpful. But unlike job bookings, where we have the option with automations to automatically send a booking confirmation because it is a specific day and time, to have that go in. However, when you have a job allocation, let's just talk about job allocation windows real quick, which that needs to be enabled on my accounts. Let me go to my add-ons. So job allocations, or allocation windows, I should say. Let me just search for windows. And this account is on ServiceMate's old plans where you paid per job as opposed to the tiered pricing you see today. That's what that's about. So that's just a free thing to enable on all the current account plans at the moment. And let me refresh this, and now we have our job allocation windows. And allocation windows is the name of the type of allocation we have. So during business hours, we've been using a lot of urgent, morning, afternoon, and you can set time frames that those will be applicable in as well. Um, and I mentioned before sales follow-up call, for example. That's a pretty common one, and I would set up a sales follow-up call. And the time of that would be during business hours. So let's just say again, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in this use case. And it is a high priority, and save that. Okay. So now I have a sales follow-up job allocation window as well. But the biggest thing I wanted to point out here are these times. And where these can be really, really helpful is when we are setting up communication templates. So if I did want to send a customer communication that, hey, we do have this allocated for you, we can set up a new window here, a allocation confirmation. And you can add this to other templates as well, and the subject line of whatever. But the biggest thing I want to point out here is the next scheduled, there it is, next scheduled booking time. Okay, so this merge code will populate the times that we see here in the allocation windows. So if this was a follow-up call, hey, we're going to call you sometime between 8 and 5. Or if it was a morning allocation, hey, we're going to be there sometime between 8 and noon. So that's another good use case for those allocations. And what that means is what will be presented to the customer will be within those time frames as well. I know a lot of, think of it kind of like your FedEx delivery or your cable guy installation, those kind of windows of time. And it's a little similar to in your company settings under job settings, you have arrival windows where you can set kind of a window of time that communication would go out to the customer. So if you booked again from at 8 o'clock, it would say somewhere between 8 and 10, where instead of it going based on the job booking, it would be based on the job allocation. Okay. So overall, job allocations, really, really powerful and important tool for a lot of customers to be using. And now more than ever, it's even more accessible because it is visible on your staff schedule board. All right. So I do want to additionally talk about recurring jobs. And I know we kind of went here prior, but within recurring jobs, ServiceMate 11 did a nice update to this screen. And so let's go ahead and select a customer to create a job allocation for, or I'm sorry, to create a new recurring job. And I can go in here and set the customer. I can, the recurring type. See, this is what I was looking for. And the recurring type can be a reminder to the inbox, automatically scheduled, or automatically allocated. And the big difference between the inbox and being automatically scheduled or allocated is that these two will automatically create a job and put it basically on the schedule. Where the inbox sets it up to be, hey, this job should be happening, and do we want to go ahead and create that job? So this would literally create a new inbox item that would go up here and say, this customer is looking for this type of job and it's time to put that on the schedule. This is great for those customers who it's time for their biannual or annual or monthly or whatever it is checkup and or servicing, and they're kind of hit and miss of when they want to do it, or they really need it scheduled uniquely based around their unique needs and timeframes. So I may not want to have it automatically scheduled or allocated. I might want to have it go to the inbox so that way when it comes to me as the admin, I see that in my inbox, I hit that in the morning, and I pick up the phone and call the customer, throw them an email and say, hey, it's time for your next servicing. When works for your schedule? And you can kind of begin that back and forth discussion with the customer. Otherwise, we can go ahead and automatically schedule or allocate the job to the customer. And if I was going to automatically schedule, it says, great, well, what time do we want it scheduled for? How long will that scheduled time be for? And what staff member is this going to be servicing this job? Now, new to 11 is the ability to finally have more than one person in the recurring job schedule. So we know in Service Mate Native, we can schedule multiple people to a job. And now we can do the same thing for reoccurring jobs as well. And if you put something in you don't want, you can literally just bring your cursor on them and select them to remove them. Now, what's really, really important with job allocations is you really should be using them with a job service or template. And so for services, we can select our existing services. We can also select job templates as well if you have job templates created. All right. Now, the job description a lot of times will be populated from your job templates and your job services. But you can always create them here as well. And just like in the job, if you want to set up a checklist of items, you can do so right in the job description. Now, the reoccurring pattern, in the past you could toggle between simple and advanced. ServiceMate made it simpler in order to do that. And what I mean by that is you would set the day, when you want it to start, the frequency, and when it ends. And under frequency, I can say custom if none of these are working for me. That automatically populates or brings up all the advanced options, where I can say daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and then how often, on what days, and so on. So that's how all those would be created. And once they're really kind of set up and started, and it ends, maybe I want to, this is going to go for 5 sessions. And save that. Oh, and that's right. It's upsetting me because I didn't select a service. A service or a job template is mandatory when setting up recurring jobs. Now that we have one selected, we're able to see what the schedule is going to be looking like, how far out. It'll show at least 2 into the future, and what days those are on. And I can save that. Now, the really cool thing is not only will it be here, but when I look at my calendar, here it is, that additional job is prepared for us. So let me go to my schedule for next week, and you can see it's here, and what you're seeing it is in yellow, and that yellow means that it's going to be created, but it hasn't been generated automatically yet. Now, we weren't seeing it here because it's actually being hidden behind this other job. If I move this one, oops, I want to show that. So this automatically was created for this customer, this new job. And you can see it's reoccurring because this little circular icon here, that circular icon is indicating, hey, this is a reoccurring job. And if you notice when I tried to move it, let's say the customer called, hey, we can't do it at 8, can we do it at 11? It says, hey, this is from a recurring job. Do you want to change only this one-off setting or change all of the future reoccurring jobs also? Well, we're just going to do this one and save that because it had scheduled on top of a pre-existing scheduled item. Perfect. So now when I look at my jobs here on the 11th, I'm seeing my scheduled items. And even though these job allocations on the schedule show in between here on the schedule, that's not having any impact on my actual schedule. My actual schedule that I would see on my mobile device says 8, 9, and 11, and then after that I see my job allocations. That's the way I would want to see them. But in here I'm seeing them kind of mixed in the middle because they're just finding room to fit on the schedule itself, unless I were to actually move them to another time on the board here. And I can do that without any real problems also. All right. Now, another really nice thing about another nice addition to the recurring jobs is the ability to search. And it sounds simple, but when you do have dozens of recurring jobs listed here, finding the one you want might not be the easiest thing in the world. So being able to search for those, we did also add additional column options, including now suburb. So now you can sort by suburb as well. And another important thing to note is that I'm seeing these scheduled items here. If I want to go ahead and create this item, whether from this screen or from my schedule here, let me go out to the next week, this job here, if I were to double click on it, there it is. So do I want to activate it? Yes, I want to activate it. And now it's a full-fledged job, as opposed to being, hey, just by the way, there's something planned to be here. That actually created the job and actually put it onto the dispatch board as its own full job listed. Okay. And a few other items to note that were updated in 11 on job allocations. One being that the duration of service on these is can be as little as 15 minutes, where before, well, I think it was only a half hour and maybe an hour. So you now have 15 and 45-minute increments as well. Um, and just like on the job card itself, I can jump to the customer record right from the new reoccurring jobs template page. So really, really handy as well to be able to jump there, see details from the customer, and be able to get back directly into my reoccurring job template. So reoccurring jobs for customers that you're doing regular service for, super powerful and now even easier to use than ever. All right. So let me take a look here, and I'm going to sign in real quick on my mobile device for this user. Okay. Refresh that. And what I'm doing now is I am disabling on my mobile device location services for the ServiceMate app. All right, so ServiceMate for my user in ServiceMate currently no longer has GPS connectivity with ServiceMate. And the reason I did that is I wanted you to see this symbol here. And so if your mobile device is not set up correctly with GPS location services, which that means that your location services for ServiceMate are not set to always, which is very, very important. You're not going to get the data you really need to be seeing in ServiceMate. So ServiceMate should be set up for location services set to always, and a couple of caveats to go along with that, because sometimes some team members can be very particular about their privacy. I'm a big privacy advocate myself as well. So the biggest thing that goes along with that is saying, hey, ServiceMate is only looking at your location data when you are clocked on. What that means is at the end of the day, when you clock off, ServiceMate is no longer tracking your location as far as being able to see it on the map. And even when you go on break, you have the option of saying, when I'm on break, I'm on break. I'm not clocked in for work, so that means don't track me. And ServiceMate further is not tracking you there either. So some of those concerns on that end, why some team members may disable that, maybe without specifically doing so. A lot of times those are the concerns. Very easy to overcome those concerns, first of all. Second of all, is a lot of times what happens since ServiceMate 8 or 9, I believe. I could be wrong. Could be late as 10. Um, Updated the notification to the customer saying, hey, this app is using a location services. Do you want to change that? And it's nice that ServiceMate is adding that level of transparency, letting people know, hey, this is happening. But at the same time, it's actually kind of a detriment because we set these devices up correctly to be set to always, but ServiceMate is inviting the user to change that. And a lot of times people just hit a button to get the screen away and don't realize they've changed the location services for that device. And it becomes very hard sometimes from an admin stance to be able to know what's happening or why we're getting bad data. So this symbol here letting you know, hey, location services are probably inaccurate or unavailable because the device needs their settings need to be updated. So this lets you know which users now do not have their device settings set up correctly, so you know who to address and what to do on those. And we'll probably have a separate video that may play right after this part in the training of how to set that up correctly. All right. Let me turn that back on because I want it set to always. Perfect. Refresh, and right away, ServiceMate is back to having the location details that we want and need to see. Perfect. Okay. Now, another really nice addition to ServiceMate is when I look at a service job, I can see the check-in history on it. So this job doesn't have any history, so let me just create some. And let's say it was, I spent an hour, well, start time was at 10, and I was there for 52 minutes, let's say. Okay. Now, one of the things that was added is the ability to, if I wanted to add that time to the job as a labor rate, I can select my labor rate right here, include rounding to the nearest 15 minutes, and include travel time. So if travel time was captured on this job, then when I were to include that and I hit bill, it would add that travel time as well. Before, this travel time option wasn't there. So it's really, really nice to see it there now. You save that, and you can see back here that labor rate was added. And when you do that, if you see here as well, it adds it as it puts the date of it as well. So it's very easy to see what dates each of these are really for. Okay. Now, if you notice, I had to select that labor rate when I was in this screen. What we could also do is set a default labor rate per staff member. So if I go to settings and staff, I can open up a staff member and hit edit and go to options, where I can now see a default labor rate. And I can select one of my labor rates. And if you notice, I'm not seeing all my material items. I'm only seeing ones that have labor. And how ServiceMate focuses on material codes that include labor is by literally having the word labor in your material. So if that material includes the word labor, especially in the item code, ServiceMate understands it as labor and will give you that option here. But also, what's really important is ServiceMate documentation has the ability to, if a job is, let's say, $1,000 and $300 of that is labor, to give it a breakout. And if I wanted to get a subtotal of material and a subtotal of labor, it would do that automatically because it knows which of those items are labor because it has the word labor in the item code. So if we're not already using those functionalities within ServiceMate, highly recommend it. Okay. All right, so let's talk about invoicing for a second. Now, when I'm looking at jobs that are on the invoicing tab is here for a very specific workflow within your ServiceMate plan. And so basically what workflow does within, so basically what the invoicing tab does is once a job has been marked as completed, it automatically presents itself here. And the first step in that process is awaiting approval. So what the awaiting approval screen is all the jobs that have been recently completed that need to be reviewed. It's sort of the last place that we check to make sure all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, pricing is looking correct, the verbiage is looking good. And I'm also able to see here if invoices have been sent to the customer or not. And if they haven't, I can go ahead, open the job, review everything. Yep, this all looks good now. Produce that invoice and go ahead and email it to the customer right from here and send. And let's just go ahead and yeah, I can send it there. Perfect. Done. Close that. Now we see the extent. I have a nice little stamped icon. Just so you can see it, I'm going to go ahead and produce an invoice here and hit the print option. And once I've done that, oops, did something wrong there. There we go. Print. Oh yeah, that's right. So what I need to do here is actually hit the print invoice. That's what I wanted to show. Is yep, go ahead and mark it as sent for printing. There we go. And so you can see there's a different icon if you're printing. So lots of teams have customers where they are okay with and want an emailed receipt. Other teams, they're like, no, I need a hard copy. And for those teams where you are printing and sending those through your snail mail, being able to know which ones have been sent to the customer and still know which ones they are is super helpful. But once I'm able to do all that, I can have these all done and everything's good. I can then approve these invoices. Now, if your account, I probably should wait because I'm sure that's loud. Because my printer right behind me there. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So now that it's printed, I'm able to say, okay, great, everything's good to go. Let me go ahead and approve these invoices. And if your account is connected to an accounting package like that ServiceMate, if your account is connected to a accounting package, if your ServiceMate account is connected to an accounting package that ServiceMate integrates with, such as QuickBooks Online or Xero, then approving the invoices is actually the part of the process that sends the details of that job to the accounting package and creates a new invoice there based on the job number and all the job details. But if you're not connected, it just simply approves it. And that job then is available to us in awaiting payment or paid depending on the status of that job. And then these are all done, nice and clean. Now the other big things I want to kind of showcase here is the ability to search, which is before sometimes you could have several dozen jobs and you're trying to find a specific one or ones for a specific customer. You're able to now search for specific ones. You can also include specific verbiage in that search, such as is overdue, and be able to see them listed there. Now, one thing that is important to note, and let me just grab a job here and I'm going to kick it back to a work order. Save it. And mark it complete again. That resets it to where we're going to see it again back on the invoicing page. Sometimes things will happen, especially when you are connected to an accounting package, where you may need to approve an invoice that maybe for whatever reason is already set up in the accounting package, and we don't want it sent there again, causing confusion. So what I can do here is approve the invoices, but mark them as approved. And approve without sending to QuickBooks. Because this account is not connected to a QuickBooks account, that option is not here. But I'm able to go ahead and, let's say in this case, mark it as sent. So I'm going to say, yep, I marked it as sent, and it has a different icon indicating that I did so manually. And we're good to go on that end, and now I can approve this job and approve. Perfect. All right. And maybe I want the other search, there's other searches you can do, such as search is unsent. And this would show me all of the invoices which had not been sent yet. So again, instead of having to filter them and visually seeing them, I say filter to visually kind of, I only want to see these ones, and you're kind of just picking through the lines. To be able to visualize the jobs differently is going to be super, super helpful. One of the things that we have started noticing internally with some other customers is the date they were looking at jobs, and they had a few dozen jobs in their list, but when they sorted by date, it didn't look correct as far as the dates that were sorting there. And when we asked ServiceMate on this, the reason for that was there was not an invoice generated yet. And because of that, it used the date of completion as opposed to it's looking for the date of invoicing. And so once that invoice was generated, that date is here. So while this date, it just says date, we don't know what date it is. From my understanding, it is the date of invoice. Now, another big piece here is if we did want to bulk send emails or printing, I can be able to select multiple jobs here and hit email invoice. And it lists the invoices, and it will list the emails it's going to. So this one is a problem because we don't have an email here, right? So I can go back to this job and resolve it and then come back here. But one of the things that was added to ServiceMate 11 is the ability to pick an email template you want to use, where in the past it always just simply defaulted to your standard invoice template. Now you can choose different templates. So if they are, for example, multiple jobs that are well overdue, you'd be able to select those specific ones and then select a specific email template, such as a payment demand or an overdue payment template, and be able to send those emails out in bulk without having to do it one by one. Perfect. Now, what I want to do real quick is create a new customer, a new job for the ServiceMate added customer. And the biggest thing I wanted to show here is when you create a new job now for a customer who has a balance due, that balance due shows up in the client diary. So when I'm creating this job, I might want to know, hey, they've got some outstanding invoices that they haven't paid for yet. And there may be a certain number or a threshold or whatever the case might be, but to be able to see that here is really, really important, because if they have one or two jobs that they haven't paid for yet and they're asking for more service, this may be a customer we might need to have those other jobs paid for before we can render additional services. So to be able to see that without having to dig in or find that out is super, super helpful. And now that's just part of ServiceMate 11 now. All right. Well, it's in. We have about 40 minutes in, and there's a few items that I want to talk about more, but I think I want to give them more time for myself as well to digest some of the pieces before I'm presenting it. But also, I want to make sure they have enough time to review them. So we'll probably save those for our next session together. So definitely feel free in the future to, if you do have any questions, reach out, join the chat sessions, and in our open training, or feel free to reach out to us directly at digitaldatadddesign.com. And we'll look forward to meeting you again in the next training session.